The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Welcome to Planting Seeds, Philanthropy in Saskatchewan, a show where we aim to connect you to the donors and charities making an impact across the prairies. I'm your host, Victor Roman Morrow at the South Sask Community Foundation. I hope you enjoy the show. Today I have a special guest who is Monica Totton, who is the Executive Director of the Regina Early Learning Centre here in Regina. So welcome to the show, Monica. Beyond that very brief introduction, is there anything you might want to let the guests know or the audience know about yourself or the centre?
I've been working with the Regina Early Learning Centre in some capacity for about the past decade. Mm-hmm. I've been an employee for the past 6 years and in the role of Executive Director the past 2 years.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And can you let us know a bit about what is the Early Learning Centre? What does it do?
The Regina Early Learning Centre really thrives on partnership with parents and caregivers who have children prenatal to age 5 and help fostering and nurturing healthy development to get them the best start we can in life.
Yeah, great. And I asked you a question right before this, and this might help give some context as to how it works, is because I'd mentioned I'm the board chair for my son's daycare, and I said, do you benefit from like the government subsidies right now, that $10 a day? And you mentioned, well, it's free. So how does that work?
Yeah, well, under our umbrella organization, we have 7 programs. Mm-hmm. There's different streams of funding for each program. And the program that is sort of under the umbrella of early learning and childcare is our preschool program. Mm-hmm. And because that's a program that supports low-income families, it has sort of a different model than traditional childcare funding. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really fit the $10 a day because it's a free program, essentially. There's a $40 annual registration fee, and then everything else is offered.
So it's really about like helping those who don't have the means to enter a traditional daycare system. Would that be sort of an accurate way of putting it?
It just is a different model of early learning. Some families don't need all day care. Some might be still working out of the home or have different things going on where this is more a situation that meets their need and they're eligible through that low income status.
Oh, that's good. And you mentioned, was it 7 programs or so? So right. What are those programs? What do they look like?
Sure. We have, of course, the preschool program. So I kind of define it as the heart of the agency because it's how it all started. 46 years ago, our founder, Anne Luke, was a kindergarten teacher, and she was a newcomer to Canada. And it was obvious to her the disparity that children in our community were experiencing. And she saw the racism at, I think, a different level than those of us who grew up here. It was more obvious. So she wanted to do something different, and she essentially knocked on doors and asked parents what they wanted for their children. Yeah. And they started up the preschool program. And then over the years, it became more obvious that we needed to intervene and support prevention even earlier on. Yeah. So we started with some home visiting programs, parents as teachers and kids first home visiting. And then from there, we added family outreach because there's a variety of things that families experience that can challenge their ability to parent in a good way. So those things, just supporting mental health and food security and all those things. And then more recently, we added, I guess it's already 13 years ago, we added the Family Resource Centre and the Triple P Positive Parenting. And then our newest program is the Regina Perinatal Health Network.
Yes, that one. I remember very vaguely when I became a parent, that one I took advantage of, at least for a little bit. Awesome. That I wasn't sleeping because I had a newborn, so I don't remember much about what I did. But that clicked. I was like, oh, I remember that program, and I remember it being really good. I think it was like right when it started too. So
we launched during COVID. So
that's exactly then when it would have been. Oh, that's fantastic then. And with all these programs and the unique structure, and I guess people not paying for the daycare, like how is this organization actually funded? Like how are the lights kept on?
So right now we have core funding from government sources, it's about 75%.
Okay.
Some of those streams are through Ministry of Education, some are through the Health Authority, and some are through social services. And then we have some municipal support from the City of Regina. And then we're working along people like yourself to close those gaps through foundation funding and different program grants and fundraising, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. When you kind of talk about that 75% coming from, I guess, like government sources of different levels, one thing that, I guess from my experience, and it's really important to note, like this isn't harping on the way this is, because it's really important the way they fund and the funding that they give. But I know one of the things I've heard a lot from nonprofits is that a lot of that funding is very restricted in how they can use it, and not very flexible towards sometimes like operational needs or things that come up that might be emergent. Would that be the case with you too? Like, would that be seen more as like the backbone funding, but then to deal with things as they arise? Is that where you're looking for example, funding from a community foundation or grant opportunity or fundraising?
I think it would be individual to each program and what the model looks like and what the funding supports. To have a blanket statement, I don't think is really appropriate, but yeah, it would just depend on which program specifically.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to fundraising, what kind of initiatives does your organization undertake? I know fundraising is a very, it's daunting. So,
yeah, it can be for sure. We actually just launched a new position about a year ago for a manager of development, and we were fortunate that in her first year we were the charity partner for India Night, so that was a huge win. But our annual event that we host is called Small Hands, Big Dreams, and so that'll be happening this year in April at Casino Regina. We're going to start it off with a comedian, stand-up comedy, and get everybody going, and then we have a couple of sets of music following that. So there'll be some raffles and silent auction and those kinds of things. Yeah.
And can you tell me more about that event? Like, how long has that been running, or what's kind of the purpose or theme behind that event?
Well, there's a couple of different purposes. One is to raise funds for the organization and cover some of those gaps. But the other one is to engage community and share our message, talk about the work we do, and try to make sure the profile stays on people's minds and the importance of the work, so that I find that even though we've been around a long time in Regina, there's a lot of people that don't know who we are yet. And so just sharing that message and how critical it is to get involved early on with families and young children, and how that can improve lifelong success.
Yeah, absolutely. One of another guest we talked to, actually just recently, we kind of had conversations about how you mentioned, like, not a lot of people know who you are. Even our community foundation, that was kind of something that is still true and very true when I got brought on about 4 years ago. It's just like, it feels like a lot of the nonprofit sector are these little hidden secrets. And they're like hidden gems that are really essential to the well-being of the community. But the nature of being a nonprofit is you don't have a giant budget to go market yourself. And it's not just about creating all this awareness with like all the magical funding that you don't have, right? So when you are looking at kind of reaching out to the community and gaining that awareness, what are some ways that your organization is looking to do that with?
Well, networking, relationship building. I think foundation of the work we do with families and with the broader community at all is built on relationships and who we can share the stories with, and how we can share the impact, and how we can listen to the stories to help families move forward, and those kinds of things. And beyond that, of course, there's like the mainstream strategies of like social media and newsletters and all those kinds of things. But I think fundamentals, it's relationship building and conversations like this.
No, absolutely, and hopefully a lot more people know a bit about the organization after this too. One other thing I want to talk a bit about is you mentioned the founder, Anne Luke. And one of the unique relationships that the Regina Early Learning Centre actually has with our foundation, which is that, was it at Anne Luke's passing or her retirement when the fund was started? And that is my gap, because I was off at that point. But
after she passed away.
It was after she passed away, and that was just a couple of years ago now, I believe.
I think it was about, I'm not sure if it was 2 years ago, November or 1, but yeah, on her 80th birthday.
Yeah,
she passed away.
I remember I live very close to the center, so I remember being in the park when when there was like a bit of a celebration going on in honor of Anne. And for me, I'm like, I don't know if that was a year ago or 2 years ago, but one thing I know that was formed was the Anne Luke Legacy Fund as a way to make sure. I mean, through the Early Learning Centre's existence, her legacy is really living on. But then through this fund is more of a symbolic way to also contribute to the organization. So can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, I'm not sure what role you would have been at the onset of that fund, but can you tell me a little bit more about that fund or how it was established?
Sure, yeah. So I'd been having conversations, learning more about what the Community Foundation does when I came into this role as executive director. And the idea of an endowment fund just seemed so hopeful because it was something that would live on in perpetuity, and it seemed like a authentic way to engage maybe a different variety of donors who wanted to know that their gift giving would live on in legacy. And for Anne, like, she put her heart and soul into the Regina Early Learning Centre and really fostered the sense of community around the organization, and the culture it has today lives on quite strong. And so when she passed, we really wanted to do something that recognized what she had done, you know? And so we were fortunate enough to have somebody come forward and help us have enough funds to launch the Legacy Fund, and chatted with her family about would it be okay if we named it after her, and they were quite pleased with that. And yeah, it's just a way for us to continue to tell the story about how we came to be and how important it is for us to continue to be, in a way for us to build capacity so that we can, you know, diversify our revenue streams and maybe at some point be less dependent on some other streams of funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just for the audience's context to kind of understand the way legacy funds work, at least through our foundation, we call them legacy funds. Kind of the back end word that, to be honest, doesn't mean a lot to people, so we don't use it as much anymore, is endowed funds. But really the spirit is that the fund is, like, as we said, planting seeds. It's like a seed that is planted that will keep growing. So the idea is that every single year, it's not just that you have, say, $10,000 and then it's used over the span of 2 or 3 years. It's that $10,000 is planted, and ideally you get more donations that grow and grow and grow. And then as you see that balance grow, then every single year the interest gained off of that is actually, it goes back to the operations, in this case, of your organization. So what's kind of neat about this is it's both like a charity, organizational, operational fund. Operational fund, I guess, would be the best word, but it's also a memorial fund at the same time for the very founder. So it's kind of, it's neat to me that this fund wears those two hats and is able to honor that person while also directly supporting your organization. And you know, if from an audience member's perspective, you know, if someone's thinking about giving back to an organization, it's important to think about, you know, I can give to those immediate needs, but I also understand that this organization should be sustainable, and I want it to be here 20 years later, so it's still taking care of those kids that are of no fault of their own or their family's own, just in vulnerable situations and need just a little bit of a leg up, right? So my hope is that, you know, through messaging like this, and just as the relationship goes on, that we can really see that fund grow and flourish, and ideally just become something that helps you every single year to take care of some of those costs that currently can be kind of tough to find funding for, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that would be the goal for sure.
Yeah. And with the launch of that fund, I guess, has the organization really thought about ways of kind of keeping that in the top of mind of donors as the time has gone on?
Well, we've shared it in a few of our different newsletters, but like you said, there's the competing pressures of immediate annual needs that were existing. So we just like to have it as an option. So if people want to give to what we're doing right now and help us out this year, that's amazing. Yeah. But if they want to have something that's, you know, set aside and going to have impact for years and years, then that's another option. So I think as you work with, you know, your donors and your supporters, it's good to just explore what their goals are and give them an opportunity to support what makes sense for them. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like there are those people where it's like, well, when you tell them like, well, actually your donation can just live on forever, that sounds amazing to them. But then there's others that might want to see, it's like, okay, I can actually see this impact that I'm making right now at this time. So no, it's kind of, it's always a bit of the legacy piece is always a bit tricky to communicate, which we know as a community foundation, because it's not just as simple as you give and you see what comes out. It's like you give and it's a long-term commitment. You've got your core funding. You're doing amazing work with these kids and the families, and the wraparound service, kind of making sure the family in the house is as well taken care of as the children that are at the center is really fantastic to hear. And I'm just curious, like, what are some of the barriers you maybe see families facing that you could have like a program for, like, oh, if we had money, this is what we would do with it that we don't currently have?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think, like with what we currently offer, there's needs beyond what we can serve. So there's that, just adding more opportunity to serve families with the programs we have. The one program that we spoke about, the Perinatal Health Network, received emergency funding during the pandemic, which had run out, and then we got some additional funding through some project grants, but it would be the one that doesn't have its own necessarily dedicated core funding. So I think we really have some work to do to sustain and grow what we have instead of doing new necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just the capacity for what your core operation is really just needs to be higher, or could be higher, I guess, to serve the community.
Yeah, fostered for
That's
sure.
great. How many, just out of curiosity, like how many families and children would you say you serve over the span of a year, if you know that number?
Sure, yeah. So through preschool, we can serve up to 96 children.
Oh, wow.
And then through our home visiting programs, Parents as Teachers and Kids First, it's about 130 families.
Oh, okay.
And then through the Perinatal Health Network and the Family Resource Center and Triple P, those are more universal programs that anyone can access. So last measure was probably 3,000 unique users, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we're seeing them every day, but
No.
at some point throughout the year, that many participants,
That shows like a big diversity though, just in the types of things. Because obviously like there's families that you do see every day, but then beyond that, you're still finding ways to reach the community more broadly. And even just from understanding a bit about the organization, I think that's a good way for other people to maybe understand that it exists and that it's potentially an option for someone if they need it too.
Right. Yeah, being that some programs are targeted and it's sort of scripted as to who our audience is, and then some are universal. I think we got something for everybody.
So here's another question too, because you mentioned obviously capacity could be higher, which is not unique to you. I think that's
for sure.
That's what we hear across the sector. Just needs are going up, and the resources aren't going up at that same rate. So, is there a wait list or anything like that for kids? Like, how do you? What does a needs assessment look like, or what happens, I guess, if you've got 10 families coming, but you only have room for 1 or 2 to be involved?
Yeah, great question. So it depends which program they're applying to, whether or not there's a wait list. And if that program does, we try to triage them and figure out where the next available support will be. We try to make sure that we don't leave people not served, I guess, for lack of better terms. If it isn't us that can resource them, we try to find the next best thing.
That's great.
As best we can.
Do you have like an identified network then already that you'd kind of look at from that sort of triage lens, or?
Somewhat. I think the Regina and Area Early Childhood Network provides a variety of services in the early years. So we might reach out to some of our partners there, depending on, what the needs are of the family or the child, and go from there. And of course, the libraries and resources like that are accessible for people, just sharing those things. And
here's another just service that I know that I know that it happens because I see it, but I've seen like the vehicles going down, and I've seen sometimes they're dressed up very like eccentrically, and I'm not sure why. So can you maybe tell us a bit about the transportation that's involved?
I love that question. Well, we're pretty unique in a sense that our preschool program offers transportation for the children, and that we get reports back every year from families that if that wasn't provided, they wouldn't be able to participate. So it's really providing that accessibility and equity lens to programming. But beyond that, we also use transportation for our parent programming to make sure families can get to the programs that also support their skills and build their toolbox as caregivers. But I think what you're talking about is that during the pandemic, typically we have a preschool graduation for that program in June.
Oh, okay.
And during the pandemic, we weren't able to host our big event.
Yeah.
So the team of preschool team had decorated up the vans, and they did basically a parade to all the children's houses.
Well, that's great. That is definitely what I saw then. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was pretty fun. It was a bit raucous. Is that the right word? Like loud and rowdy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. They were really good at figuring out how to still have that connection.
Yeah,
in lieu of the celebration. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I remember seeing that and just being like, oh, there's a lot of like tinsel on a vehicle over there.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure why.
I don't know if all the stickers actually came off, but yeah.
No, that's great. And I guess kind of as we wind down, I'm curious, are there any stories that you can think of like families that have gone through the program, or it's been around for quite a while. I don't know if this is the case, but is there any children that went there 20 years ago that maybe have come back and told the story about?
Yeah, like as far as an individual story, the one I can think of is probably our manager of development, Merity, and she shared a bit at India Night about her experience. She started as a young mom and was getting her children into preschool, and then she was on our board of directors for a while, and then she decided to go into the field of early childhood. And from there had worked as a home visitor for 17 years. So really a lot of what she contributes her growth to was her relationship with the ELC and what that looked like. But it's really great because I consider myself a newcomer to the team at the ELC because we have lots of long-serving staff.
Yeah.
And so when I'm out in community, I'll be chatting about where I work or what I do. And every once in a while, some people are like, I went there. I rode in the station wagon. Yeah, that's where I went to preschool. And I always find it fascinating to find out where these people are now, right?
Yeah.
And so I have this wish that our 50th anniversary is coming up, that we can sort of figure out where our alumni are and invite them all back for a big celebration and then try to gather some of those stories a little more strategically so we can say like, this is where our students are now. This is where the families are now.
Yeah. You have the tough part of having to retroactively try to figure it out. Once you figure it out and can start tracking it now, then 10, 20 years down the line, hopefully it'll be a bit easier. No, that's fantastic to hear about with Merity, and I didn't know that. I mean, I've met her a couple of times, and that's really neat to hear that she was able to both use the program and then also kind of be inspired by it. It sounds like to want to not only appreciate that, but to realize like that's maybe a path for myself. And that's one thing that that I've noticed in other conversations I've had too with creative kids. I remember hearing similar stories as that, and some others where it's like people who receive these supports, especially young, it's ingrained in them the importance of helping others. And those who have been helped are so much more likely, I think, when they become adults to want to give back to their community as well. And whatever way that is, whether it be inspiring the very caregiving career that you choose, or just wanting to be a volunteer or join boards of directors, things like that. So it's neat to see that. And I think that's one aspect that I guess it's kind of hard to track right now, but anecdotally, we hear so much about it at our foundation, just the people that went through a program and years later are just so involved in the community and so involved in giving back in many ways. Another one was, this is one conversation that our executive director had, like Alicia Morrow from the Comeback Society. She was actually scheduled to do an event with us. Unfortunately, some scheduling conflicts happened, but she was going to talk a bit about, like she's someone that gives back so much to the community, and she's also someone who, as a child, was in the Mackenzie Infant Center, I think it's called, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, you can connect those dots back, I think, in a lot of cases, and it's just really neat to see. Now we're going to kind of wrap up here. I just want to let you know before we go, or if you can let the audience know before we go, what's a good way if someone's hearing this and they really care about kids and they really care about their community, how can people get involved with the Early Learning Centre?
yeah, they can give us a call or they can check out our website, earlylearning.ca. Find us at 2115 Athol Street is our main site, but we have 3 locations. Yeah, we're here. We're ready to talk to people.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, and it's been a really nice time to chat. And yeah, I hope that the audience is hearing this and it really resonates.
Okay, thanks for having us today, Victor.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn how you can make an impact in your own community, visit us online at sscf.ca or find us on social media at South Sask Community Foundation on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today.